Hey, everybody. Here this week, we're going to be kind of piggybacking off of what we were discussing last week. So, last week, we touched on a little bit more of why January was kind of feeling a little bit hard as we made the transition from the holidays and things of that nature. And we talked a lot about kind of supporting your body. And so, here this week, we wanted to elaborate a little bit on kind of what that actually was and what that means.
Yeah, so I think as we talked about last week, like January can feel tougher for like lots of different reasons, but we wanted to be a little bit more actionable about what you can actually do to get kind of out of that January funk, especially as we move into the second half of the month. We don't need to use the time of year or the date as an excuse as to why we don't want to be doing things. And so we just kind of want to let this conversation coach you and guide you as to how you can pivot some things in your life so that you can kind of take the next step forward.
So, a lot of times when individuals hear support, sometimes the first thing that they think is like, okay, do I need to be reaching out to someone? Do I need a therapist? Do I need to be adding to my team aspect of things? When sometimes support can really mean just listening to yourself and just being able to understand what has been feeling tough, where have some of those bottlenecks been, and what do you need to kind of start to reassess, reevaluate, and prioritize to be able to get yourself back into a little bit of an alignment, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, and I think it's really exactly what you said. I think support can be adding somebody else to your team, but I think of support more of adding recovery somewhere. And there's many different types of recovery, but it starts with taking a step back and asking yourself, where do you need support? Do you need support with your sleep routine? Do you need support with your exercise routine? Do you need support with your stress management, your mental health, your nutrition? Like there's various different answers. And then when you look at, okay, what are you trying to do in that area that makes you feel like you need support and that you're struggling with, then you need to ask yourself the question of like, okay, well, like, what do I need to do? Do I need to hire a dietitian? Do I need to see a chiropractor? Do I need to just go to bed earlier and stop watching Netflix? It doesn't have to be adding something in. Oftentimes, I find it easier to take some things away that are maybe hindering us or having some bad habits to actually start making momentum in that support category.
In regards to like kind of the making the momentum aspect of it, if you don't mind me just kind of like asking you, when it comes to support, I feel there is a little bit of a negative association to that at times, to where sometimes individuals can feel as though, well, if I need help, it's because I can't do it on my own. I failed. Why do you feel that is? Is there anything that you've noticed kind of in your patients who may have been struggling with this, or I guess in us personally ourselves as well? Like, why do you feel that negative connotation is kind of attached to that?
Well, I would say for me personally, but I also say this to my patients, like as high achievers, as stereotyping millennials, people who grew up being told and showed like if you work hard, you get results. Like this has like been modeled to us our entire life. It feels as though if you're not getting the results that you're working towards, you're not working hard enough. And sometimes I guess that could be true, but I would say a lot of times we are putting an effort in places that aren't moving the needle forward. And we talk about this a lot in terms of like how we're delegating our day from like a work perspective, like how are we affecting the business and things like that. But it's especially true with health. If you are like, again, this is just because it's easy. You're like, I want to lose 10 pounds. Great. But you are doing all of the things you should do with sleep, stress management, mental therapy, red light therapy, but you're not doing any sort of physical activity and you're not paying one lick of attention to what you're eating, it's going to be really hard to get you to those nutrition goals. That doesn't mean you're not doing good things for your body. You're just not putting the effort into the category that's actually going to move you in the right direction. And so that's where I think that step back piece comes first, where you have to stop yourself and just actually ask yourself and like sit in silence and just kind of get clear on what you're trying to do. And I think on that, like what you're trying to do, it is not, your goal cannot just be like, be healthy. You need more specifics than that. You need to get more clear on what that actually means to you and focus on one thing at a time. You can say, I want to run an 8-minute mile and I want to run a marathon and I want to learn to meal prep and I want to go to bed on time. Pick one. Don't try and do all 18 things that you want to do at once because it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be a lot of change. Just starting with one thing that's going to move the needle closer to that long-term goal is going to help with that.
I think you're spot on because a lot of times too, and perhaps it is just like the history of our lives and kind of what we've been brought up along with, but it's just the grind aspect of things. And a lot of times, if it feels as though things aren't going the way they should, or we should be progressing and we're not necessarily, that we just need to be more motivated. We need to continue to push harder in things. But I think you touched on the biggest thing of all is you do need to know where you're going to be able to make all of that worthwhile. And at times that does require slowing down, which feels completely counterintuitive, as opposed to the general response is I need to be doing more. I need to be adding more. If I want results, I got to be working 10 times harder type of a thing. But it comes back to if you don't know where you're going, if you're going 10 times faster, like say you want to go to California and hang out in California, but you want to get there quickly. If you are driving 100 miles per hour, but you're heading east, you're going to end up in a completely wrong spot. You're going to get there quickly, but you're not going anywhere near the desired Huntington Beach to be able to catch some waves. Whereas if you took a pause, took a breath, and were able to be like, okay, which direction do I actually need to be going to get there? And then go, you're going to get there 100 times quicker.
Yeah, and I'd actually say I feel like this is one of the things that we do in our practice really well, both chiropractic and nutrition, is actually making people slow down and figure out what your goals are. Because we're not just blindly adjusting you or blindly saying, well, you're eating chicken and broccoli for the rest of time, right? Like there is actual thought that goes into the recommendations that we give you, and they're going to change and they're going to ebb and flow because once we understand what your actual goals are, which by the way are allowed to change a week from now, 3 months from now, 6 years from now, your plan or the things that you're doing to get you there should also change and be modified along the way.
Or chicken and broccoli always gets a bad rep, like just thrown in front of the bus every time. There's nothing wrong with chicken and broccoli. But yes, you
Sauce
do
and
make
seasoning.
let's spice that up a little bit. You're spot on. But yeah, and when it comes to just kind of like the overall pushing and just trying harder and things like that, especially if you don't have that goal, the sheer act of continuing to put in that effort, continue to push, you're seeming and feeling as though you're doing everything that you should be doing. But because you're not seeing the results coming from the fact that you're not clear on where you want to be going and how to get there, but you're putting in the effort. But because you're not seeing the results to actually get to that location, frustration is going to build because, again, you are putting in that effort, but without having that clear understanding of where it is that you're wanting to go, you're just running in circles type of a thing. And you're going to become exhausted, both physically and just mentally, with all that without having that clear guidance.
And I think I think about too, just like scrolling on social media, I see these posts all the time. Probably just them being targeted by them, but they're like, do these 7 ridiculous things for the next 30 days and you'll be like a brand new person, right? They're like, wake up at 5 a.m., journal at 5:30, have a lecture, salt in your water, like where there are all these things and they're not inherently bad things to do. But not everyone is meant to wake up at 5 a.m. They're just not. Some people do better in the evening and some people do better in the morning. And do I think it is important to take time for yourself during the day? Yes. But like, it doesn't have to be because influencer XYZ posted some Instagram post and you're like, that's it, I'm doing this for the next 30 days, I'm going to be changed. And so I think that's where it takes the like getting clear with yourself, and then also if you feel like you're struggling with this, like reach out to someone like us who can help you navigate this, because I call people out on it all the time, because we can't actually help you get to where you want to go if we don't know where you're headed.
Yeah, who it was, but there was somebody that was trending and it went super stinking viral. And I'm not even big necessarily in the social media aspect of things. So if I noticed it went viral, I feel everybody noticed it. But it was this dude who would just wake up. He just gave a run through of what his morning routine was. Naturally, it's a very jacked individual, but he would like wake up at 5 a.m. and it showed him having a bowl of ice in his kitchen. He would crack open some fancy looking bottle of water, dump it into the bowl of ice, and just like dunk his head in it. And then he would go on about the rest of his 3 hour morning routine of working out, walking by the beach, doing who knows what, so to speak. But it's just those unrealistic expectations almost. And to where it's like, okay, if I want to get that type of physique, I need to be doing these things. And again, it just sets it up for unrealistic behaviors. So, to kind of flip that, then, what would you say are kind of like some of the top recommendations that you would be giving individuals trying to take that next step forward?
And I think it really is just slowing down. I mean, I think starting with that and getting really clear on where you're going and then asking yourself, like doing a self audit, really, like where are you currently putting your effort in for health and wellness? You're meal prepping, you're going to the grocery store, you're going on a walk every day, you're moving 3 times a week, whatever it is. Like, this is not like a judgment place for yourself. You're just really taking inventory. What are you doing? And then sitting down and saying, okay, if these are my goals, what are these efforts actually supporting? And if they're not supporting anything, then it's probably a habit that doesn't need to be in there. And I would even say habits that maybe aren't good, healthy habits. Sitting on the couch eating a bag of chips, not putting them in a bowl, just opening them. I'm guilty of this sometimes. But just
Shout
like,
out to Cape Cod. If we can get a
listen,
sponsorship, like,
I would. Paxson should be a Cape Cod chip, to be honest. But anyways, like, I'm not necessarily talking about all the health habits because this shouldn't become a list of like all of the biohacking things that you should be doing. But it's really inventorying all the like you're having 3 cups of coffee a day. Well, what like is that actually supporting your health goals, or maybe it's not, and you just like, become a habit because this is just what you do every day. And I think one of the biggest things that I am personally trying to practice this year is to check in on these habits on a monthly basis rather than going 6 to 12 months and being like, oh, I wonder why, like, I'm not really seeing the results that I'm looking for. Even though I do this all day long and I help people with this, my patients get reassessments every 6 to 12 weeks. Why am I not doing that with myself? And so that is something that I'm trying to check in with myself more. And so I think if you're really trying to make these changes, it would start with the self audit. Slow down, identify your goals, and then list out the habits, both good and bad, that you're doing, and trying to see which one should stick and which one needs to go away. And as you start working through that, get rid of one at a time, add one at a time. Don't flip things upside down. These results are going to take time to get to. It is not something that you're just going to be able to be like, well, I did it for a week and I've hit all my goals. You're in it for the long game. Health is a long game, and like that is just something we kind of just cheerlead our patients on about of you just got to stick with it.
I couldn't agree more. And I really emphasize and prioritize a similar thing when it comes to just like that slow down aspect. So anybody that I work with, the biggest reason as to why I do encourage and recommend that we do a little bit of food tracking is not to be able to see all the specific numbers of everything that we're consuming, but it's purely to just raise the awareness of what are we currently consuming and how does that add up? What foods are contributing predominantly X, Y, or Z? Like, how does our day as a whole actually look? Because a lot of times we may not realize those handful of nuts that we have throughout the day. Like, yes, they're a great snack, but if we're absentmindedly having 10 handfuls of them over the course of an entire day, that is a lot of calories that do add up. But if we don't think about that because it's just surface level, we're like, oh, it's a good snack. I could go for some right now. Boom, you grab it. But that's several hundred calories that add up. So it's just that awareness piece and taking the time to be able to do a little bit of an evaluation and an assessment of what are those current habits? What are those things that may be causing a little bit of not a problem, but just slowing us down from achieving our goals to be able to really understand what little tweaks need to be made so that we're putting our effort in the proper locations.
Yeah, and I would say for the most part, like the clientele that we work with, they're pretty health conscious. Like they have the big picture stuff down. I'm not sitting here being like, don't go to McDonald's, right? Like they understand the big pictures of things of what they're supposed to be doing. When you're at that level, we're then trying to fine tune and tweak and customize for that particular season and that particular goal. It is really effective to be like, I'm going to just have 2 less Diet Cokes a day when you have 20 a day. But when you are somebody who cut Diet Coke out 2 years ago and you're like, I don't really have caffeine, okay, like you're 12 steps ahead of that. And so I think that is, it's more about the fine tuning once you get to this level. And the other thing I would say is, especially for like the higher achievers, slowing down and asking for support can sometimes feel like stopping or pausing. And I just want to clarify, like, that's not what we mean. Like, I'm not saying like just stop working out while you do a little self inventory. I'm really just asking you to have like 10 to 15 minutes a couple times a week where it is just you and it is quiet. Could be in the shower, could be in the car, but like somewhere you actually just have to sit with yourself uninterrupted and ask yourself some of these questions and try and get some clarity. This does not really mean you have to stop what you are doing and lose out on the progress you feel like you're working towards right now.
Beautifully said. And just like Cape Cod, I think we got to reach out to the company, slow down, see if we can get
Yes.
something going on that one.
Left my slow down pep out in the other room. I should have just brought it in. Like
Ah.
a walking advertisement.
But yeah, I think that kind of hits the nail on the head of that key takeaway is just taking the time, do the evaluation, and make sure that you're in line and understanding of what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to go about getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was a good conversation. Try to give you some actionable tools to really take the next step and start putting these things in action. Yes, January can be hard, but so can February, so can July, so can October. And so it doesn't matter what the calendar says, what day of the week it is. You can start on a Tuesday, you can start on a Saturday. Really just putting the time on your calendar or in your life to get clear with yourself, start putting these habits down on a piece of paper, figuring out what needs to continue, what habits need to stop. And if you need help or guidance figuring this out, reach out. We're here to help.
That's what we're here for.
Yes.
Have a good week,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thanks.